relationships, that's also something that is just not taught. And for many people, even, past their 20s and 30s, 40s, they get older, that's where therapy comes in, and couples therapy, individual therapy, and people often only really discover things about themselves well after those things about themselves have been
Yeah.
formed. So it's interesting if we sort of attack this problem at a younger age and earlier stage. It really helps people not just become more true to themselves, but gives them the tools and strategies. And that's what Tony is all about, right? The tools and strategies to take control, to not just become a passive participant in their sexuality, but to really help it take shape.
Exactly.
So it's really interesting. Yeah. And you're giving people, and not just the tools and strategy, right? You're giving them the words, right? The vernacular in order to be able to talk about these things.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here on the edge of my seat because that's exactly the point that I want to highlight, is that in the shadows, we get no distinctions, we get no language, we get no way to actually have the conversation in the first place. We often talk about the blueprints as if people are speaking foreign languages. So over here, Jai is speaking Chinese and I'm speaking German, and we have no idea what each other is saying because nobody's taught us actually how to speak in each other's language. And the erotic blueprints are like that translation dictionary that starts to get it so that we can have the conversation in the first place, because of all the stuff we're talking about cultural inherited mythologies around sexuality, morality around sexuality. The blueprints sort of like level the playing field, because we're taking shame out of the dialogue and we're talking about human pleasure as a natural birthright. Like we're born out of sex. We're born to experience pleasure, and we need access to it. And the erotic blueprints are like the perfect foil for getting us there.
I'll back up that every cell in your body is actually wired for pleasure. We have touch receptors. There's a purpose for pleasure in our lives. And I think that we get so busy just doing. And for those of us, especially who live in, feminine energy, we really need, it's like nurturing our radiance that is our gift to the world. We really need to stop and take that time to put pleasure first. And it's become one of our core brand values to put pleasure first. And I will admit that it's one that I struggle with, because I can get very into do. I'm so passionate about my mission that I forget to take that time to nurture, to feel pleasure, to find pleasure, to become a pleasure seeker throughout my life.
It's interesting, you mentioned women too, because there is that stereotype, you do you, girl, right? Like, you take the time for yourself, new moms, it's a big thing, right? Like, take care of yourself first. Don't put your child first. But we associate very superficial things with that. So when we think of pleasure, a lot of times we think, oh, she's going to take a spa day, right? She's going to go out with her girlfriends and have some wine. But those are not truly ways of taking care of yourself and providing pleasure. And they're certainly not sustainable, right? They're just quick fixes. So this is really interesting, that having this deeper understanding and this language with your partner, that essentially it sets yourself up for success. Right. So what are these blueprints? Because I think by now everybody is very curious of what they are. If you guys could sort of go through them, and then also, there is a test that you can take, and, sort of tell people where they can take the full test. But if, as you're going through, sort of explain what are some of the questions you can ask yourself, and what are the ways that you can identify which one you are, just sort of, off the top of your head.
So first piece is, as I'm describing them and as Ian and I are going through them, to just listen for what you resonate with. Like, I'm very embodied. I do a lot of body. I think the body has an intelligence, and that there's a lot of wisdom there for us to listen to. So just notice, does something really resonate in your body with you? And that may give you a truth as to what type you may be. And then we also have the quiz. So there's the mental aspect of determining your blueprints. So that's taking the quiz, listening to what I'm about to say now and what's really resonating with you in your body. And so the quiz, people can go to eroticbreakthrough.com/Robins to take that quiz, and it'll give you a percentage of what you are of each of these blueprints. But I believe the best way to actually determine your blueprint is to get really hands-on with seeing what your body has to say with different kinds of touch. And I can go into that a little bit more as we dive deeper into, first, discovering mentally what we think we are, and then maybe being surprised by what our bodies say. And so I'll go into that a little bit later.
Great.
So let's start with the first one, which is energetic. And the energetic blueprint is turned on by tease, lots of space, anticipation, and yearning. They like to long. And energetic has a lot of orgasmic superpowers. So on their positive side, they can have orgasms without even being touched. The wind could blow right across their skin, and just the deliciousness of the energy of the sun, something like that, could be, because they're so sensitive, they could go into a lot of pleasure with very simple things that we may not think of as sexual or erotic.
So Jaya is an energetic, and energetic is not my primary. I've really developed my energetic, and it's, for me, standing on the outside of being with an energetic at the beginning, it's kind of like mysterious and Jedi Knight stuff, and also a little bit like woo woo. Like, what is I can stand over here 5 feet away from you and just give you my presence and energy, and that's going to create an orgasmic response in you. Or if I come too close too quickly, that short circuits you and has it so that you can't drop into your pleasure. So the sensitivity of the energetic is one of the primary things that really gives away that you may be a primary energetic.
Mm-hmm. And so if you're not having the Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and I'm glad that you said that you're there with your presence, because I think that the overly simplistic way that people might think about this when they think, oh, someone who has, anticipation and longing, is hard to get. Right? Like somebody who holds back and plays hard to get. And that's, but I want to be very careful that people don't assume that that is what you're talking about, because it is not about removing yourself and detaching yourself, and that person then wants you more. It's about being there, right, in a certain way. So I wonder if you could sort of help us make that distinction, because I think that's really important to make.
So as a very fundamental note, one of the things that we constantly stress with people is that presence is actually probably the primary sexual skill.
The awareness of what's happening in your own body, but also awareness of what's happening in your partner's body.
Mm-hmm. And awareness of the energy, especially for an energetic, between the two of you. So the presence is actually key to this connection. And it's key to actually discovering your own truth erotically, because one of the things when we were talking about the mythologies earlier of sexuality in our culture is a lot of it disconnects us from our true essence, or being able to drop into our body and say, that is me, that is what I resonate with. And as we talk through the blueprints and get into some of mine, I'll definitely reveal where some of my shadow parts were